All right, thank you guys for coming today. I was very excited about this webinar. I love talking about whole grains, so this is like my fun time here. So it's also wellness for me. As she said, my name is Andrea Nikolai, and I work in Polk County. I'm the Family and Consumer Sciences agent, and I'm a registered dietitian, and I love talking about food and nutrition. So I work in Extension, and I know some of you don't work in Extension. So just to kind of summarize, we're like the outreach arm of the University of Florida. So we extend the knowledge that people that you guys do in the university out to the people and make sure everybody gets that knowledge. So I focus on nutrition and health and those things, and my dot is right basically in the middle of the state. So it's kind of cool. Good for hurricanes, good location. And then we are an equal opportunity employer. Okay, my outline today would be to test your whole grain knowledge, why choose whole grains, find whole grains. So these are good. And then learn about some of the less mainstream whole grains. So it's like quinoa has become big, but like what could be the next quinoa? So I just kind of want to get you excited about other grains that maybe you could try and that you might find one that you just love, that's maybe not as mainstream yet. All right. So the first part is testing your knowledge. So you guys got to help me in the chat. And so the rest of the time, it's not as interactive unless you want to add questions. But if you can help me this time, like at the beginning, that would be awesome. Because I just want, it's kind of fun. It's more fun when you do the quiz. All right. So what are whole grains? Do you guys think A, B, C, D, or E? Do you think it's grains that are darker in color, grains that are low carb, grains that contain bran, germ, and endosperm, grains that are organic, or grains that have been fortified? You guys, you guys are rock stars. Thank you so much. They're playing. Okay, so we have C. You guys are good. All right. So I know I got a great group. Okay, so what are always whole grains? Is it barley, oatmeal, enriched wheat flour, 100% wheat bread, all of the above, or none of the above? Sounds a little bit harder. Oh, you guys, thank you. All right, it is actually B. Okay, and we'll talk about that. So pearl barley is sometimes, so barley is usually a whole grain, but if they pearl it, they take off some of the bran, so then it's not technically a whole grain. And then some of the other things we'll talk about too, but 100% wheat bread, it could be whole grain, but it's usually when they just say wheat, it's not whole wheat. And then enriched flour, definitely no. Sorry. All right. And then which guarantees a half serving or more of whole grain? So there's a certain label that you can look for, and then you'll know that it has at least a half serving or more of whole grain. I don't know, does anyone want to guess that one? Yes, you guys, good job. It's D. And so you can look at that on cereals and things like that and know that you're getting at least half grain whole. And sometimes they'll have 100% on there on that stamp, and then you'll know you're getting 100% whole grain. So that is good. So yes, Melissa, good question. Gluten-free oatmeal is also still a whole grain, which is really nice. It's usually always gluten-free. And I have a slide to show that. That's kind of nice about oatmeal. It's just that sometimes it's made in a facility with like things that have gluten. So that's why sometimes it's like be cautious with that. So try to look for a gluten-free specifically one, but it always should be gluten. Okay. And then whole grain products. Yeah, so we got that one. True or false? Whole grain products are always high in dietary fiber. True or false? A or B? I saw somebody put T. Okay. So that one is false. So a full serving of whole grain can range from 1 gram of fiber to 5 grams of fiber. So fiber is only one of the whole grain benefits. So it's like brown rice. It doesn't have a ton of fiber, but it is still has a lot of nutrients. So it's kind of like, it's not always a real big benefit, but mostly. And then what indicates a whole grain? So which of these words do you think mean that it's whole grain? Stone ground, unbleached, multigrain, wheat, all of the above, or none of the above. So you can look for this word then, and you would know. Yes, you guys, it's F. Yeah, geez, good job. None of the above. Okay, so none of these are surefire whole grain words. So I just thought it's important to kind of know how to find the whole grains first, because we know, like as you guys said, they're nutritious. And so we want to be able to find them. So whole grains one-on-one. And thank you so much for playing. I really appreciate it a lot. You guys are great.
Andrea, real quickly, somebody asked if quick
Yeah.
oats are whole grains.
Yes, that is so cool. They are, it's nice because they have, we'll talk about what is in a whole grain, and it's the brand germ and endosperm. And when you make quick oats, you just cut them smaller, but you still keep all three main parts. So that is really nice. It does, absorb faster in your body, and that's why getting like more of like intact grains when they don't cut them as much can help you feel more satisfied, but it's still a whole grain, which is really nice. So just talking a little bit about health, then there's like lots of risks for whole grains, but like your risk of heart disease drops 25 to 36%, risk of type 2 diabetes drops 21 to 27%, risk of digestive cancers 21 to 43%, and risk of stroke drops 37%. So there's a range because there's lots of studies on it, but they really have a lot of benefits, and there's more. So they found that people who eat more whole grains, it controls weight. People live longer. It's 9% lower risk of death from heart disease, which is really great, and it drops blood pressure. That's really great too. A lot of that is the fiber, but there's benefits other than this. And if you have kids who eat more whole grains, like they found in studies, have a lower risk of obesity and diabetes, lower cholesterol levels. It can reduce their risk of asthma, help them feel fuller and more satisfied, and may reduce acne, which is pretty cool. And so this is just cool. I thought this study was great, but just whole grains cut asthma risk in half. So children who ate whole grains, like they teased it out on which foods like affected asthma the most, and it turns out it was whole grains and fish. So they found that children who ate more whole grains were 54 less likely to develop asthma and 45 less likely to develop wheezing than children who did not eat whole grains. And also fuller and more satisfied. So this is with kids again, but they ate refined breakfast, like the ones that ate non-whole grains, ate 150 more calories when offered like an all-you-can-eat breakfast buffet. So they found that people, like the kids, are more satisfied with the whole grains. All right, and then there's some reasons for these benefits. There's lots of nutrients. Like whole grains have 3 to 5 times the vitamins and minerals found in refined grains. And just antioxidants, for example, corn has almost twice the antioxidant activity as apples, while wheat and oats almost equal broccoli and spinach in antioxidant activity. So it's like they have it too. And they're molecules, antioxidants are molecules that fight free radicals in your body. So they go in and like make, free radicals can damage your cells and cause aging. So then it's really great to have these things to fight it. And they're fiber, which we know can help with cholesterol and help you feel full and satisfied, and then getting longer lasting energy. So that's like, you kind of, your blood sugar is staying stable, so you're not as just likely to want foods without like being able to think about it. And I like this slide, so I thought I'd put it in there, but it's kind of cool if you can see the green bars are like what you would get for whole wheat, 100% of these nutrients. And then refined grains, like in comparison, then you end up with the red there. And so you can see there's a lot lower, but then you guys have heard of enriched wheat flour. So what we do then is we add some of the nutrients back in to enrich it because we took some out. And so they add 5 things back in, and you can see those by the yellow bars. So they end up passing the whole wheat, but it's like they don't add in everything. So that's what enriched is doing.
For the lowering asthma, somebody asked if that comes from the vitamin E or the omega-3s.
I'm not sure. I would have to look at that study better to know what it was. And I actually, I looked at it right before the class. I don't think they actually knew what it was. It was correlated with that. So that doesn't mean that it causes necessarily, but just they found that people who ate more whole grains, helped with that reduction. Does that make sense? So we don't know exactly learning on that. And I'll double check it. If I'm wrong, I'm going to send that to Patricia. So she can send that. Okay. I got asthma? No. Okay, and then just with dietary guidelines for Americans, so they recommend at least half of our grains should be whole grains. And I just read the new dietary guidelines recommendations for 2025 to 2030, and the committee was saying that they really recommend if we can try to change that to from half to most. So if we know that there's a lot better, outcomes for adding more whole grains. So definitely like 3 at least. So trying to get that, and then trying to have maybe a whole grain at every meal, because that's one way you could do it. So at least 3 servings is about half of what we have. So what is a whole grain? So you guys will ask this, and so you always know then, a whole grain includes everything. So it's these 3 parts, and you know it's a whole grain when it has all 3 parts. And so there's the bran, there's the endosperm, and then the germ. And so it can be, if the grain has been processed, like if it's cracked, crushed, rolled, extruded, lightly pearled, or cooked, the food product should deliver approximately the same rich balance of nutrients that are found in the original grain seed. And then that would be the whole grain. And whole grains tend to have at least 25% more protein than the refined counterparts, and generally have more protein than fruits and vegetables as well. And, like sometimes people think, like if you eat whole grains, you have to be like sitting in the middle of the field, like eating them right off the stalk. So it's just that they take off the inedible parts, but these 3 parts are edible. These are the 3 edible parts of the grain kernel. And just having all 3 of those there makes it whole grain. If that makes sense. So they can take off the whole and it's still whole grain. Just, you don't want them taking off the bran, the endosperm, or the germ. And you can kind of see like how we ended up with white bread and white rice. It's because they take off the bran and take out the germ, and then you would end up with the endosperm, which is way lighter in color. So that's why it's white bread. And then I put the grains in a column for you guys so you can see, like if you're gluten-free, or if you have celiac disease or gluten sensitivity, there is a list on the left, and then the not gluten-free ones would be on the right. And there's a lot of, so there's some really like quinoa, sorghum, and millet, amaranth, and teff. Like all those are just, kind of up and coming. And it's really nice because some of these are complete sources of protein, which means that they have all 9 essential amino acids. And we don't talk about it that much, but like quinoa has a good source of protein. And then also, I believe amaranth, and there might be one other one, that's also, I think, complete source of protein. So that's really nice just to have that as an option. And I'm trying to think if there's something, but yeah, all of these would be considered whole grains when they have their bran, germ, and endosperm included.
Somebody
And
asked,
yeah.
somebody asked, are both still cutouts and rolled oats whole grains? And which one would you consider is better?
Both of them are. And I would just say, whatever your lifestyle needs, sometimes the steel cut take a little bit longer to cook, but they could, because it takes your body a little bit longer to digest them, maybe make you a little bit more satisfied. So that could be good. And, just, I was trying to think, oh, I just wanted to say too, gluten, it's a protein. So it's not like bad, or, just what it does is it helps the elasticity of breads. So when it's gone, then it's a protein. And so when you take it out, it just sometimes the things on the right, don't form that kind of fluffy gluten that makes the bread not fall apart. So that would be kind of what gluten does. All right, finding whole grains, reading labels. Okay, I need you guys again. Okay, these words mean whole grain, okay? So we got the whole name of the grain, whole flour, whole grain, and then X. And then whenever it says berries, we know we're good to go to, and groats. So these, okay, so berries and groats both mean that it's the whole kernel. So whenever you see that, it's the whole grain. And it's like the first 3 are kind of nice because they're obvious. So you can always look for the word whole. So if you look on the Kix cereal, and then there's like another cereal, Corn Chex. sometimes it's whole grain corn and sometimes it's not. So you can look at the label and you look for whole corn and then you're like, yes. And then if it's just corn, it might not be whole grain. So you look for the whole, and then if you see berries or groats, you're good to go too. And then we got these words. Now this is a little bit harder, I think. I think it's confusing a little bit for people. But these words also mean whole grain. Okay? So we got, let's see. Nope, that's it. Whole grain rice. You'll often see brown rice or wild rice or red rice or black rice. And all those are whole grain, but they don't say whole grain black rice. So it's like you just have to know, which is like, how are people supposed to know? But that is just know when you see those kinds on wild rice, it's always a whole grain. Okay. And then even instant oatmeal contains the brand German endosperm. So that is also a whole grain too. So even though it's in the packets, it might digest really quickly. You're getting a whole grain there. And then bulgur, it's made from cooking wheat kernels, then drying them and breaking them into small pieces. So it's like cracked wheat, basically. That's raw, broken wheat kernels. Um, and then bulgur is the cooked broken wheat kernels. So the both of those, cracked and crushed wheat and bulgur, should also be whole grains then. That's that. And then the thing about, you remember we talked about pearled barley. So the pearling is the thing that takes off some of the bran. It still means barley is very nutritious because it still has a lot of fiber. But if you can find hulled or hullless barley instead of pearled barley, then you know that you have more of the whole grain. And then graham flour is actually a name for whole grain too. Unfortunately, if you look at graham crackers, they're not necessarily made of 100% whole graham flour. So you can look on that, you can kind of see where the graham flour is, but that is whole grain. And then one of my favorite things is that whole white wheat, and you can trust those words. Sometimes it's like, what? But when it's whole white wheat, it's a different kind of wheat. So it's a special variety that grows naturally with a lighter color and milder flavor. So I feel like we should just be using that more in the country, but I don't think it's really caught on yet. It has all the good nutrition as regular red whole wheat. Just makes kind of a lighter, fluffier baking option, like you guys were talking about at the beginning.
We have a
So
couple of questions about oats.
yeah,
Um, what does still cut oats mean, and is it better? And
you
the other,
know,
are organic oats better than regular oats?
I'd say on the organic, what I've read is it'll help the environment. Like nutritionally, probably not much of a difference, but it would be great for the environment, the organic maybe. And I'm not sure specifically on oats, like what they would do differently for the organic versus non. And then the steel cut oats just means that, so it's like the oat kernel, it's like oat groats is its biggest form. And then the steel cut, they end up just taking that kernel and breaking it up. So it's I don't know if they use steel or not. I would love to see a factory, but they do that. And then what they do after that is the old fashioned rolled oats. That would be the next one down. And then there's the quick oats, and then there's instant oats. So it's like the more whole the form, then it would probably take longer to digest. And even though they have all of those are whole grain, like if Patricia and I both ate oatmeal, like if she had the instant one, that would be on the lower end, she'd probably want another packet sooner than my groats that would be, digesting in my belly. So that can be a benefit of having them kind of more in a whole form. Does that make sense? Okay. And so maybe yes. Thank you for the chat questions, you guys. Maybe yes, maybe no. We got flour, wheat flour, organic, natural, unbleached, semolina, multigrain, stone ground. Okay, so those just maybe yes, maybe no. So it's like the FDA defines flour as when they put flour, it means refined wheat flour. And wheat flour is refined wheat flour. So it's like, sometimes people say, I buy wheat bread. But you're like, do you buy whole wheat bread? Because, it's all made out of wheat. So it's like you drop the whole grain. So just watch for stuff that says 100% wheat flour, because you're like, of course it's wheat flour. Is it whole wheat flour? That's what you want. And then organic and natural and unbleached, they're all healthy sounding words, but they don't guarantee whole grains, although whole grains can be all of those things. And then semolina, it's a type of finely ground durum wheat that's used in pasta. So we can find that whole or refined. So you can get whole grain pasta, whole semolina, wheat pasta. So it's a type of wheat, like who knew, right? And then multigrain is when there's several different kinds of grains. And this one kills me too, just because if you refine wheat, corn, oats, and rye, so you take off their bran and then their germ, you can still call it multigrain because it's multiple grains. So you just want to look for the words whole, like that's, you flip it over and try to see if they are whole grains or not. You want the ones with the bran and the germ still there. And then these are not whole grains. So enriched flour, you know that they've had to add stuff back in. Bran, so that's just part of the grain, you know, can be good for you. Like wheat bran cereal, I think it's just made more from the bran, which it's actually not a whole grain, but it does have a lot of fiber. So it's like one of the good parts of the grain, right? And then there's germ, same thing. Wheat germ, you might have heard. Degerminated cornmeal. So sometimes I look for a whole grain cornmeal when I can, because you know that's what we want. But a lot of the ones we get is degerminated, which means they would take out the germ. All right, and then pearled barley. So I talked about that. Still a good choice, but not all of the bran. And grits, hominy, and farina. When we see those, we know that it's almost all refined. Okay, let's do a quick label reading practice. Which ingredients are whole grains? Is this product 100% whole grain? So if you looked at this label, would you guys mind just typing in the chat which are the words that mean whole grains? Then we can just quick go through which ones they are. So of these ingredients, which ones mean whole grain? Whole wheat, whole white wheat flour. Yes, you guys, yes. So this one is one. There's a couple more. Yes, oats always means whole grain. And she said first four. Yes, you got it. Okay, so the one that's not, that some of you guys think is the oat bran. Okay, so the whole grain ones would be millet, probably, whole wheat white flour, yes, oats, brown rice flour, because it's brown rice is the whole grain. And then the ones that aren't would be that degerminated cornmeal. We know water, sugar, soybean, salt, they're not even grains. And then the wheat germ and the oat bran are not whole grains either, because they would just be parts of the kernel. So you know it's a whole grain if it has all three parts. So I just know like they could still be good for you, but they just aren't whole grains anymore. And we do know, you know, sometimes they think that the sum of the whole is better than the parts. So we learn that with different foods. And I don't know that it's come out for sure in grains yet, but I could see that being something, you know, having the whole grain, just lots of benefits. And then I had to show you this too, because as a dietitian, like, you know, trying to help people, I was like, this does not, you know, it definitely looks like brown dark bread. But if you look at the ingredients in this, you can see that the first ingredient on the one on the left, the pumpernickel bread, it's enriched flour. So which is wheat flour, malted barley flour, niacin, reduced iron, thiamine, riboflavin, and folic acid. So those are those nutrients they're adding back in. And water, and then there's rye flour, rye meal. So it's like I would want to look for whole rye flour. And then at the beginning, I know enriched right there is not whole grain. So I'm like, dang, okay, so you pick up the one on the right, you're like, wheat Kaiser rolls, that looks good, you know, promising. So you look at the ingredients and it says rolls, water, enriched unbleached flour, wheat flour, niacin, reduced iron. So they're enriching it with all the vitamins again. And then it has whole wheat flour. So it's probably better than a white one, you know, because it has some at least. But do you guys know why did they put the ingredients in the order that they do? No. They put them in order from, yes, good job. Yes, you guys, the most to the least. So we know that like if whole wheat flour, like one time I was looking at Ritz crackers, they came out with a whole wheat variety one time. It said made with whole wheat. And I was so excited because all my patients loved the Ritz crackers. And I looked at it and it was like whole wheat was like down at the end by salt. And I was like, dang. So it really doesn't have a ton of whole wheat, you know. So that's why kind of looking at this, at least is the second ingredient here. So that's, you know, better for sure. But you can trust the stamp. So that is one thing, you know, you can rely on and use that. If you see that on the whole grains, you'll know you got it good to go. Okay, and then here are some whole grain specifics. I just wanted, this is fun because you got to try some of these different ones. Sometimes hard to find, but yeah, we can talk about that later. Okay, so here's one of them. It's amaranth. You guys all have to put in the chat if you tried this one. My mom thought it was kind of like a corn cob flavor. The leaves are actually edible. It's used in Asian and Caribbean cuisines. It's not actually a grain, but it's a seed of the amaranth plant. And it's the name of the more than 60 species, and only 3 are grown for food. Gosh, Lauren, that's so cool that you have. It's a native crop to Peru, and it means one does not wither or the never fading. And it has kind of this slight peppery taste, which is really interesting. But you find it on streets in South America, often popped like corn. So you can actually pop this little grain, and it's just like little corn, little not corn. It's just little popped grains. Sometimes people will pop them then, and they'll have that whole grain, and you can put it on like yogurt or in cereal, things like that. And it's thought to have cholesterol lowering properties. It has good amount of calcium too, but also has iron, magnesium, phosphorus, and potassium. And then this is one of those that could be considered a complete protein. And then here's just some bread I made out of amaranth, so which is kind of cool. I actually did not the flour, but just the grain. So it was with, I'm pretty sure with wheat flour too. And then, because we remember that amaranth is gluten-free, so to get like a good bread texture, you might want to mix it with something. Okay, barley, have you guys had that one? Maybe. Okay, so this one has one of the highest levels of fiber, and some of it's soluble. So we know that soluble helps lower cholesterol. So that's really good. And I guess I like this one because it's like firm and chewy. You know how everybody has their different tastes and stuff. So like the amaranth is kind of like a porridge. It reminds me of, you know, it's very like kind of like, yeah, like a porridge. But this one is more distinct grains, and it's firm with a chewy, mild sweetness. And it's great for salads and could be a great substitute for rice or risottos. So whenever you're making something that calls for brown rice, you could use barley instead, or just if it calls for white rice, then you can definitely use barley. But they have this indigestible, thick outer hull, and that has to be carefully removed because to avoid using losing the bran part. And because of this, then the barley is often pearled or semi-pearled, meaning all or some of the bran has been polished off. So to avoid that difficult processing, there's hull-less varieties now that they've been bred so that the hulls, like they're loosely attached and you can just take it off. But you just know then if you get the pearled, which I seems like more common, you just have a little bit less of the fiber. But yeah, and it also has selenium, which is really good for immunity. Mention that. And it's really good with like things like mushrooms, root vegetables, warm spices, fall flavors such as apples. Really good too. Okay. Then we have buckwheat. This one is fun. So despite the name, buckwheat is not a type of wheat. So I don't know why we do this to ourselves, right? But yeah, so just remember this one is actually gluten-free. It doesn't have anything to do with wheat. It's closer actually to rhubarb. And it's gluten-free, right? And there's like these pyramid-shaped kernels. And they're called buckwheat. I had to look up why it's called buckwheat then, right? Because they, just why would you do that? So it's seeds that they're closely resembled the much larger beech tree, and that plant has been called like beech wheat or buckwheat ever since. So it's because we use this grain kind of like we use the grain of wheat, they called it buckwheat, but it looks like the grain from the beech tree, which ended up to buckwheat. And in this one, we were right. It is a complete protein, and it thrives without chemical pesticides. So it's like you can kind of see how some of these could become, bigger. It's great for lowering cholesterol. I have to tell you a secret. Okay, so it has all these nutrients too, but one thing that is important to know when you're cooking buckwheat grains, like you might get kasha, and that's the same thing. It's like toasted buckwheat. And you might get buckwheat flour, and you might have made buckwheat pancakes. Um, but buckwheat, what I'm trying to say, okay, if you, okay, the top picture, I made buckwheat once with the groats, and what happens if you just cook them with water is it becomes like a really gummy flavor. They like the kernels love each other, and they love getting together and joining. So it's kind of becomes this like jellied mass of if you just cook it like that. So what people suggest, chefs recommend, is you coat the grains before you cook it, before you add the water, with a little bit of egg or oil, and you just kind of toast them in the pan, because that helps the grains stay distinct and so that they don't all gum together. So it really, if you don't mind that texture, it's a really good porridge then, and it's like a thickener, and you can definitely see how it could reduce your cholesterol, because this is like soluble fiber going in your body and just like taking out the bad stuff. So buckwheat, very good for you, but just know that it does that. And then on the bottom picture, you can kind of see the grains. Kind of cool. Bulgur, I don't have a picture of this. I need to get one. It's wheat kernels that are boiled, dried, and then they're ground by a mill. So they're already, if they're already boiled and then they're dried, you can tell that this is going to be a really quick cooking one. And it's nice because you can sometimes find this one at Walmart, for instance, in, I believe, kind of like the ethnic aisle in bags, and it's a lot less expensive than maybe if you get it online. And there, it's really good for you, right? And it's very quick cooking. You might have heard of tabbouleh. Oh, Melissa, she does it with the egg. That's good. Yeah. Okay. And then buckwheat pancakes. Yeah, nutty would be good. And bulgur, sometimes I'll just, if I feel like a whole grain, just take some bulgur and then pour hot water over it, and you can just let that sit and it'll cook. It might take like 20 or 30 minutes, but at least you don't have to do anything. So that's kind of nice. And tabbouleh is that Middle Eastern salad. I know you guys have seen it. It's with chopped parsley. It has bulgur wheat, tomatoes, mint, onions, seasoned with olive oil, lemon juice, and salt. Sometimes they sell it in the deli section, so you kind of know it's bulgur. It has a lot of green herbs, but usually has bulgur in it. And then there's farro. I love this one too. I guess I really like the distinct ones that are very distinct grains. It kind of makes me feel satisfied in the chewiness of them. And this one is a type of wheat, so it has gluten, just like any other wheat product. And I just a couple of years ago, I found this picture in Aldi. So they were selling like a box of farro with red pepper, which is kind of neat. And then this one originated in Egypt, and that's the reason it's sometimes called the Pharaoh's wheat. And Turkish scientists found that emmer wheat, or this farro, was higher in total antioxidant activity compared to other wheat varieties. It's kind of nice too. It also has, iron, which we look for, especially if you're a woman. It can be really good. And here's a picture, just a man I know, he makes a weekly waffle. He's done it for like 5 years and put different things in the waffle all the time. So this waffle happened to have a little over a half cup of cooked farro, and there it is, adding it to the waffle. And then it also has over a half cup of lentils, and he put dates in there. But as you can see, you can add whole grains to a waffle and they can come out looking like a waffle. So that's kind of nice that you can know that you can do that. And then frike, this is my favorite just because it's different from bulgur. It's a type of wheat, but it's harvested when the plant is still young and green, and then it's rubbed and roasted. And there's a rumor, like how it started, is that it was discovered when an ancient Eastern Mediterranean village, like they were about to be attacked. And so they hurried and picked all their wheat, and the wheat wasn't quite ready to be picked. It was still green, but they, didn't want it to be damaged and stuff. So they picked it, they put it in the barns, but it was still burned. So the enemy came and burned it all. But the people found when they came back then that this wheat, roasted young, it was still fit to eat, and it was quite delicious. So that's where frike came. So it's wheat that has been harvested when it's still a little bit green and then roasted. And so that's cool because it's still a whole grain and kind of has this smoky flavor. Yeah, so I love that one. Kind of like bulgur, but different because it has that roasted, whereas bulgur is already boiled. And then we have millet. Um, I gotta see which one, Sandy, you have to tell me which one is fun that you had to try. You guys have really good comments. Patricia, I'm gonna have to go back and read the comments later. So millet has a yellowish color.
Which store in town carries them, and I think Words carries most of them. I've seen them in Whole Foods, but you can also visit some of the ethnic stores around town. They have a lower price and a bigger bulk for them.
You guys are good thinking. Yes. I yeah, I always seem like online for I kind of live in Polk County, so not as close to Whole Foods and stuff, but Bob's Red Mill, and then I also found this place called the Azure Standard. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of that, but you can buy bulk grains, and some of them are at it seems like a pretty good cost. So if you like grains, you'll have to check them out. Okay, so I think one of our last ones here, millet. So this one you might find in birdseed, but it's also great for food. And it's one of the more digestible ones. So I remember one of you guys might have mentioned that in the beginning. So it's gluten-free. It's especially high in magnesium, a mineral that helps maintain normal muscle and nerve function. That can also help prevent migraines. That's really nice. And India is the world's largest producer of millet. And then there's 8 African countries and China that make up the rest of them. But India is by far the most. And the Chinese, okay, millet's legacy persists in the Chinese language where the signs for millet and mouth together make the word harmony and they contribute to the word for peace. It's kind of cool. But millet in Africa is often eaten as a porridge and also used for brewing millet beer. And in the United States, it's probably more familiar like with the bird seed, but we would be great if we ate it. So we can definitely do that. And flavor profile, it'd be buttery. It pairs well with mushrooms, herbs, warm spices, scallions, and squash. Then we have sorghum. This one is becoming bigger too because it's the 3rd largest cereal grain in the U.S. And farmers in the Great Plains from like South Dakota to Texas appreciate it because it thrives where other crops would wither and die. So like in drought periods, it actually becomes partially dormant, so it can survive. The other cool thing about this one is it's like if anybody had Israeli couscous, it's like these it's couscous that is in bigger kind of round circles, and that's what sorghum looks like. And so you can pop that too, just like amaranth, and then you can put it on different things, and you can see how I popped it and then burned it. But there's so you just don't want to go to the stage on the right. You can also ground it into flour for baked goods or even brew it into beer too. And this one, sweet hints of corn or wheat flavor and pairs well with southern ingredients like bananas, berries, bourbon, dates, figs, ham, peanuts, pecans, and warm spices. And it's actually a flowering grass, and it's found across the U.S., like we said. And you can make syrup out of it by extracting it out of the sorghum cane instead of sugar cane. And some describe it as like a better, sweeter molasses. Sometimes people were saying like it kind of is like a mix between maple syrup and molasses together. So if you ever find sorghum syrup, it would be a sweetener, but that's an option. And then we have spelt. So I was trying to find spelt, and spelt pasta is kind of cool because if you don't really love whole wheat pasta, spelt pasta in its whole form, it's very, I guess, more kind of like white pasta. And so that's really nice for people who, are not really sure about the whole grain pasta taste. Haven't gotten used to the nuttiness. But it's not gluten-free, but it's better tolerated by people who are sensitive with that. It's also available as whole berries, and you can also get refined spelt. So you can get refined or you can get whole grain spelt. So you want to look for the whole grain one. And then there's teff. And this one, teff is the smallest grain in the world. It takes about 150 teff seeds to equal the weight of a kernel of wheat. So that is crazy. So it's native to the Horn of Africa, where nomads would carry enough teff seed in their pockets to sow an entire field. Pretty cool. And it has calcium, iron, protein, grows in 3 colors, red, brown, and white. And that tefa, the word tefa actually means lost. And you can kind of see why, because it's such a small grain. I like this one because it's not really distinct grains like I usually, like you guys know I like, but it kind of has like a chocolatey flavor, like a malty flavor, and it works great in chocolate cookies, cakes, brownies. You can replace some of the flour. You can put it in pancakes. It goes well with dark fruit, nuts, pumpkins, and seeds. And it's really neat because you know how we were talking the brand, the, the kernel has three parts for the whole grain, and the teff as the bran and the germ, they make up a larger percentage of the grain, um, and it's always eaten in whole form. So that's pretty nice. You can't, it's like too small to break it down. So whenever you see teff, you'll know you're okay with the whole grains. And um, yeah, I think that's the main thing I want to say about it. So molasses like flavor and very versatile.
Lauren
Really good one.
just shared a photo of her daughter not looking too impressed with Tef.
Really? That's awesome. She's like, I don't know what this.
And there was a question that came through, why are sprouted grains popular now?
Oh gosh, that's good. So sprouted grains are popular. Probably one of the reasons is that they're more digestible. So I have a friend who, like, there's the, trying to remember which grain it was, but he sprouts them, and so that would be one thing you can do. But it's found that it helps release the nutrients and make them more available to us, and that it's kind of like cooking does the same thing, but sprouting, yeah, just helps increase the nutrients and helps us be able to absorb them better. So when you see sprouted grains, that's why I think people are onto them. And then my last one is the triticale. This one's pretty cool. I don't know if you guys have heard of this one. It's actually a cross between wheat and rye. And all these grains are like lots, many, like thousands of years old. But this one is only about 100 years old. And the main goal is was to create a grain with the advantages of wheat, um, with the advantages of rye. So like they put the two together, um, and it was like it's great because they found that it requires few pesticides, reduces soil erosion, and can capture excess soil nitrogen. So it could be really good for like organic farming. And so we think, it hasn't really caught on yet, but it could have a shining future. So this one is a possibility. That's kind of cool too. You get the mix between the wheat and the rye. And now I just have a couple quick resources, importantly, right? So I have to tell you, this Whole Grains Council, if you haven't heard of them, it's old ways, and then you go Whole Grain Council, or if you just do old ways, whole grains, you'll probably find it. But they have so much information on whole grains, and they are also really great with recipes, and they'll tell you health studies. Like I was just looking at all the new ones that have come out just recently. They're like the top, like health benefits of whole grains, and like whole grains help reduce this and this and this, and it'll help you feel better about your whole grain choices. And then there's recipes too, and information about gluten-free whole grains and more. But here's one of their recipe homepage. So I just took a screenshot of that just so you could see, so you can kind of like say you got one of these grains and you're like, I have no idea what I'd even want to do with it. And so you could click on whichever grain you got on the left side, and then you can look for recipes with it, and they have a lot. And I know there's the internet's out there, so you guys could probably find lots and lots of stuff. But this is just a nice, place to find some of them. Okay, let's see. Was there anything else on that? Oh, I do want to talk just quickly, just maybe like a minute or two, just about cooking them. Just don't be afraid of cooking them. Rice is one of those things where it's almost tricky to make rice sometimes. But the cool thing is with a lot of these grains, like especially the whole grains ones, you can kind of make them like pasta, like wheat berries. You can boil them in water and you just drain off the extra water. And so you'll know, you're good. And that's okay. It's just like you want to eat them. So that can be good. And then I also, oh gosh, I don't know, Patricia, if you happen to have it handy, but she's got I sent her a link for a handout on how to cook grain. Oh, thanks.
Just
She's
upload
great.
it in the chat.
Oh, thank you. So it tells you how much water to add, and then different tricks about like sometimes if the grain gets stuck on the bottom, how you can get that off, which is really nice. You just add a little bit of liquid and let it sit, and then it'll release. So don't let that stop you either. But thinking about ways you can use easy substitutions. So just maybe using a half cup of cooked bulgur or wild rice or barley when you make bread stuffing for like Thanksgiving, or having like homemade soup. That could be another really good way. You can use the grains to thicken it and add some bulk. So maybe instead of adding rice or pasta, maybe you add some whole grains. You could do the bulgur. You could do wild rice. You can do rye berries, sorghum even. And then thinking about using whole cornmeal for like corn cakes, corn breads, and then using oats, in some of your ground beef when you make meatloaf, because the oats would give you that whole grain. And then you guys said it at the beginning too, switching half of the white flour to whole wheat flour in your recipes. Um, just, yeah, it can really help. And you can use other flours such as sorghum flour, be really good too. So I'm just thinking, just trying to experiment with different recipes and different grains, because you might find like the one that's perfect for you. And then sometimes it takes a while to like appreciate the nutty flavor of like wheat and maybe brown rice. It doesn't quite taste the same as white, but there might be a grain that you just love, like, going into it. Because amaranth and barley and buckwheat, they all have a different flavor and texture. And you can make risotto, different ones, pilaf. So anytime like you're thinking about using rice, maybe you could think if you could maybe use a different whole grain instead. And then I have a survey. It's basically a couple questions, but I just wanted to see kind of how I can make this better. So if you have any comments on that, please, I would love to do the survey. And do you guys have any questions?
There were two questions that came through.
Yeah.
Mara has a daughter who has celiac disease, so she wanted to know if there's evidence from gluten determination analysis for the cereals that you mentioned earlier.
So if there's gluten, what do you say?
I guess that there's like a gluten test or something that's done to determine if something is good for someone with celiac disease.
Well, it's nice because someone with celiac disease, you just want to avoid the gluten because want to avoid the gluten. So then all those grains that were on that right side of that one slide that are gluten-free, those would be great choices, any of those whole grains. And just the gluten, when you have celiac disease, it can cause inflammation in the digestive system. So you don't want that, but that's just when you have celiac disease, just so everyone knows. But that is the difference. So like she'd be great with like wild rice or brown rice or buckwheat or amaranth, or what are some of the ones? Teff. Does that make sense? Does that answer that question?
Yeah. There was a question that came in earlier. Where is it? Are beans in general whole grains?
They're not considered grains, but they have a lot of the same benefits as whole grains. They have the fiber and help reduce cholesterol and stuff like that. And sometimes people put them in the carbohydrate section because they do have some carbohydrates, but they're not grains or legumes.
And last question we have are, what are the best grains for someone with diabetes?
I would say any of the whole grains, just because they take longer to digest. It's when it's refined, it's just kind of is a lot more digested already, so that it could raise your blood sugar quicker when you eat something like that. So white bread and whole wheat bread, they might have around the same amount of carbs, but then the whole wheat bread would have some of that fiber to help slow that down, and it's got that whole grain, so it's got that bran and that germ that are a little bit tougher to break down, so that it would keep your blood sugar from going up so quick. And then that can help it keep from dropping so quick too. And that's sometimes where we get like the feeling like we want like sugar or like something really quick because we get really hungry. So having like the whole grains when you can, especially ones, is good. You guys have really good recipe ideas too. Peanut butter chocolate chips. Oh yes, have cookies. That was good. Okay, I might have to try those, and I'll have a picture in the next presentation.
More questions? Well, we'll wait to see if there are any more questions. Uploaded a link on the chat for where the recording is going to be uploaded on our YouTube channel. And if you're interested in more webinars are coming up in April. There's another link in the chat that shows what we have coming up next month. And we have a list of financial webinars coming up with IFAS also for April. Let's see, any more questions? Or anything else you might want to add, Andrew?
I just was laughing at some of the chat, the comment about the birds. Yeah, that's great. I'm excited. You guys inspired me too. Thank you. Thanks for being on here.
Constance asks, are there any suggestions for easing a person out of white rice to whole grains?
I think,
Hard
yeah, you guys,
for
do
me.
you have ideas? I think, okay,
No.
so I know, you know what, one of them, like cooking it with chicken broth or something like that, or vegetable broth, just can like, make it a little less like can help increase the flavor, I think. And sometimes I say with white pasta and whole wheat pasta to go half and half for a little bit, just really get used to it. But white rice is so different than brown rice, isn't it? You almost just have to think of it as a different like category, but it is really hearty and has that nutty flavor. So, um, and you can make it into sushi. There's short grain brown rice, so it's possible. Good options. So I guess keep trying, or maybe you could just try quinoa instead, or another one. We didn't even talk about quinoa, but that is another great whole grain. So
Quinoa is good. I do like quinoa. Yeah.
yeah,
I
quick
think I
cooking.
feel it's more flexible. You can do like a lot, you can put it in salads and things like that. Like, I don't know.
Yes, you can kind of roast it like the other ones too. Yeah. So I wonder, which grain will be the next quinoa. We should check back in 5 years. Maybe it'll be sorghum. Be like the one everybody's talking about. I don't know.
I mean, I know couscous is not a whole grain, but I also kind of enjoy that.
Couscous.
Yeah,
That is
it's not a
fun.
whole grain, but I do enjoy it.
That's a really good point. You know what couscous is? It's like a really tiny pasta. So
Yeah,
that it can be whole grain. So you're right. You could get it whole wheat couscous. Yeah,
really, I've never
whole
seen
grain.
it.
I know it's hard to find, but you can get it. So, which is nice because then, yeah, it's a whole grain. So it's kind of like pasta, just how it can be refined or not. So, fun fact. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you, Andrea, for the information and for giving us your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day, you guys.